All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about something we all feel, the battle for your boredom. I mean, why is it that in any moment of quiet, our hand just instinctively reaches for our phone? Well, it turns out this isn't just some quirky modern habit. It's a really deep struggle with a very long history. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the science behind that twitchy feeling, the systems that are literally designed to keep you hooked, and maybe, just maybe, the ancient wisdom that could be the cure.
So let's start with that feeling. You know the one. You've been scrolling. You put your phone down, and suddenly you feel kind of jumpy, agitated. It's like you want to crawl out of your own skin for a second. We've all been there. And believe it or not, that physical sensation actually has a name.
Some people call this the stimulation differential. Think of it like this. It's the gap you cross when you go from a super high stimulation state, like being on your phone with all the colors and sounds and information, to a really low stimulation one, like just sitting in a quiet room. Your body is still revved up, but your environment is suddenly quiet. And that mismatch, that's what feels so uncomfortable. And you see this pop up everywhere, right? It happens when you finally close Instagram after a long scroll session. It happens when you get home from a totally chaotic workday. Or even just in those little moments, like waiting in line for your coffee. Every single time, you're crossing that differential and your nervous system is basically just trying to play catch-up. So what do we do to avoid that weird, uncomfortable feeling? Well, we pick the phone right back up. We're basically keeping ourselves in this state of chronic stimulation because we're afraid of that little bit of agitation. But in doing that, we lose out on the very moments of emptiness that our brains desperately need to recover, to reflect, and to have those amazing aha moments that only ever seem to come in the quiet. So why is that pull so incredibly strong? To really get that, we need to look under the hood at our own biology, at our brain's reward engine. It's a system that is hardwired to always want more. At the very heart of this is our reward system. It's this whole network in our brain that's in charge of motivation, learning, and craving. And its evolutionary job is actually pretty simple. Make us go out and seek things that are good for our survival, like food, water, and connecting with other people. And this brings us to a huge misconception. We've all heard dopamine called the pleasure chemical, right? Well, that's not exactly right. It's way more accurate to call it the chemical of motivation and anticipation. Think of it like your brain's compass, pointing you towards what it thinks will be rewarding and giving you the drive to go get it. This is where scientists make a really crucial distinction, the difference between wanting and liking. Wanting is that craving, the desire to get something. That's all dopamine. Liking is the actual pleasure you get from it, and that's controlled by other brain chemicals like opioids. So that feeling of, I have to check my phone, that is pure 100% dopamine-driven wanting. But the actual enjoyment you get from it, the liking, that can be a totally different and sometimes much smaller story. Okay, so our brains have this built-in engine for wanting. Got it. But this isn't just an internal struggle we're having with ourselves. That very system is being intentionally targeted by the architects of our modern attention economy.
In the world we live in now, your attention is the most valuable resource there is. The attention economy is basically a system where all these platforms are in a constant, fierce competition for your eyeballs. The more of your time and attention they get, the more money they can make from advertisers. It's as simple as that.
And one of the main blueprints they use to do this is something called the hook model. It's a 4-step framework, and it's specifically designed to engineer a loop that keeps you coming back again and again and again. Make no mistake, this is the playbook used by pretty much every app on your phone.
So let's break down how this thing works. First, you've got a trigger. That could be a notification that pops up on your screen, or it could be an internal feeling, like boredom. That trigger leads to an action, like opening an app. And then comes the secret sauce, a variable reward. This is the key. Just like a slot machine, the reward is unpredictable. You never know what you're going to see. That randomness is what keeps your dopamine system firing like crazy. And finally, you make an investment. You post something, you comment, you like, which then loads the next trigger. And the whole cycle starts all over again. And once you see it, you start to notice these tricks everywhere. I mean, think about the infinite scroll on social media or the autoplay on video sites. There's no natural endpoint, no stop sign telling you you're done. They totally prey on our fear of missing out, or FOMO. And every single notification is basically a little pull on that variable reward slot machine. So, with all this overstimulation, it's no wonder that the idea of a dopamine detox, or dopamine fasting, has gotten really popular.
It sounds like the perfect fix, right? But can you actually reset your brain this way? Let's try to separate the real science from the internet hype.
Let's just go straight to the source. Dr. Cameron Sapah, he's the psychiatrist who actually came up with the term. He says this, quote, "Dopamine is just a mechanism that explains how addictions can become reinforced and makes for a catchy title. The title's not to be taken literally."
So, here's the most important point. You can't actually detox from dopamine. It's not some kind of toxin you can flush out of your system. It's an absolutely vital neurotransmitter that you need for basic motivation and even just to move. The real goal isn't to get rid of dopamine. It's to reduce the constant, intense overstimulation so your brain's reward pathways can just chill out and regain their natural sensitivity.
So how do we actually do that? Well, there are some really practical unhooking strategies that directly fight back against that hook model. First, remove the triggers. Turn off every notification that isn't absolutely essential. Second, add friction. Move those super addictive apps off your home screen, maybe hide them in a folder. And third, delay the rewards. Instead of clicking a link right away, use a read it later app. It's all about breaking that cycle of instant gratification.
Okay, now that we have some tools for our modern lives, let's zoom out one last time. Because this whole battle we're having with boredom and distraction, well, it's not new. Not at all. In fact, some of the best advice on this comes from centuries of philosophy.
I mean, just look at this timeline. You realize our struggle is ancient. The Roman Stoic Seneca was writing about it way back in the 4th century BCE. Fast forward to the 17th century, and Pascal was calling it the misery of man. But then you get to thinkers like Schopenhauer and Heidegger, and they started to see it as something much, much deeper, a key to understanding ourselves and the world around us.
Schopenhauer, who was famously a pessimist, had this really fascinating take. He saw life as a pendulum, just swinging back and forth between pain and boredom. But, and this is the interesting part, he also thought that being easily bored was actually a sign of intelligence. It meant you demanded more from the world to be stimulated. And then Søren Kierkegaard went even further with this incredibly dark and powerful view. For him, boredom wasn't just, unpleasant. He called it the root of all evil. He saw it as this kind of empty nothingness that could push people to do literally anything just to escape it. He saw it as a really serious force in human life. But then, the 20th century philosopher Martin Heidegger offered a completely different way of looking at it. He basically argued that instead of running away from boredom, we should lean into it. He believed that what he called profound boredom strips away all our usual distractions and can actually put us on the road to a more authentic life by revealing what truly matters to us.
And that kind of brings all these ideas together, doesn't it? The philosophers are suggesting a complete reframing of our very modern problem. What if boredom isn't a void that we have to fill with the next notification or the next video? What if it's actually an essential space, an opportunity for reflection, for creativity, and for discovering who we really are when all that constant stimulation finally stops?
Which leaves us with one final, and I think pretty provocative thought. In a world that is so meticulously designed to capture and monetize every single second of our waking lives, is intentionally choosing to be bored the ultimate act of resistance?